temperature has dropped down to 30 degrees. Now we have some freezing water. We have some loose water on top of freezing water, and a person's going to go into that curve. It's like playing Russian roulette if you don't reduce your speed.
When the roads are wet, icy, or snowy, speed is your enemy. Reducing your speed, giving you more time to react to hazards, and that is the secret to safe driving. Avoid skids. If you get into a skid, either a broadside or a locked wheel skid, that's an enemy because you've lost control of your car.
If you do find yourself in a skid, the best thing you can do is get off of the brakes. Even though you might be thinking to yourself, I won't have enough space to stop, if you keep skidding, you definitely won't have enough space to stop. It'll take you a much further distance to bring your vehicle to a stop if it's sliding than if your wheels are actually turning.
The major thing that you have to do is concentrate on your steering, because that's what's going to give you the best chance to get out of the situation. So we always concentrate on trying to get the front of the car to go where we wanted it to go in the first place. Steer the front of the car where you wanted it to go before it started to skid. And if you're going into a curve or up over a hill crest, you don't know what's on the other side. So there's two things you have to do, and it has to take place automatically. Reduce your speed and give yourself the curiosity to ask what's on the other side, rather than assume it's going to be okay. And if we're asking ourselves the right question, we're going to see the information a lot sooner.
When something occurs in front of you, you want to have some other option available besides slamming on the brakes. So once a person identifies a potential hazard, there's basically four options they have to avoid a collision. One would be the brakes. Another one would be steering either to the left or to the right. And then the fourth option would be to speed up. So they need to start thinking about, well, what can I do besides slamming on the brakes? A lot of times steering out of the way, steering up on the shoulder of the road, maybe hitting a paddle marker or a guardrail rather than rear-ending another car. I know there are options that are available if we would think about them ahead of time.
Maintain your car, make sure it's in good running order, and that means not only the lights, the tail lights, the engine, the tires, but make sure the windshield is clean.
We found that if the tires are more firmly inflated, you're able to have better steering capabilities with that handling characteristics with the car. So it's one of the cheapest things that they could do for preventive maintenance is keep the proper tire and pressures.
If you feel a catastrophic tire failure while you're driving, the best thing you can do is to gradually come to a stop. Avoid locking up the brakes again, because you may end up losing control of the car. Just take your foot off the gas pedal, make sure you have a firm grip on the steering wheel, and coast as much as possible if you have space. If you need to use the brakes, just use them lightly. If you're on a freeway or if you're in a bad spot, move your vehicle onto the shoulder, and then drive nice and slowly with a flat tire to a safe place.
When we have a brake failure, something that we fail to do is look at other alternatives to avoid the crash. We panic. You can always shift down into a lower gear. There's always an emergency brake that you could use. You can always use steering as an option. So those are some things we need to think about if the brakes go out. Sometimes the brakes go out, it just means that they've lost some fluid and that extra pressure is necessary.
Usually, if you have a power steering or brake failure, it's because you have engine failure as well. If you can continue to control your vehicle and move onto the shoulder and coast to a stop, that's fine. If your vehicle comes to a stop and you're in the traffic lane and you can't move it to the shoulder because of engine failure, then you're best off turning on your four-way flashers and then moving away from the vehicle onto the shoulder yourself and calling for assistance. Immediately after the accident happens, if no one's injured, and it's a property damage only collision, meaning that it's only the vehicles that have been damaged, then it is okay to move those vehicles out of the roadway. Many drivers are under the impression that they have to preserve the scene If someone's injured and they can't be moved, yes, you'd want to leave those vehicles there. But otherwise, if everyone's fine, there's nothing wrong with moving those vehicles out of the traffic lane. The last thing you want is to have another accident. You'd also want to exchange information with the other drivers if there are other drivers involved. And we all have a responsibility. When we think of the term hit and run, we think of someone actually fleeing from a scene in a hurry. But that also covers things like your responsibility to exchange your personal information as far as the information on your driver's license, information on your vehicle registration, and insurance information. If you leave the scene and you don't exchange that information, that is considered hit and run, the same as a person that actually flees from a scene.
The term light rail has nothing to do with the weight of the vehicle. Our vehicles are close to 40,000 pounds. Light rail actually refers to the fact that we have shared right-of-way in certain places with a car. We have the right-of-way, plain and simple. Basically, because we can't stop this big, heavy train fast. We're not rubber on asphalt. We're steel on steel. Not a lot of friction there. From my personal experience, the leading cause of an accident between a car and a light rail vehicle is people being unaware of where they are. They don't know that the train is there. They don't know the train is coming. I was operating inbound from our Archives Plaza station at about 20 miles an hour, approaching an intersection where the traffic crosses our rails at a right angle, and a lady failed to stop for a red light. She saw the red light just in time to come to a screeching halt directly on my tracks right in front of me. I knew there was no way I'm going to be able to avoid her. I went into full emergency brakes, and I braced myself for the impact. And the most shocking thing about that particular accident for me was there was no impact. My 4-car train just tossed this woman's car aside like it was a feather pillow. But that was just sheer terror. I took a week off from work just to recover from the emotional impact of it. It's still with me. I know that one, absolutely not my fault, but still, to hit a human being, I don't ever want that to happen again. When you're driving alongside of a train in shared traffic, don't linger. Don't stay right next to the train. If you have the opportunity to pull forward in your traffic lane, as long as you're not going to cross in front of us, do so. Don't stay right next to us. We've got a close to a 400-foot long train here, and we can't always see what's right next to us from our mirrors. So if you're going to pass us quickly. If not, then relax, slow down, get behind us. Don't turn left in front of me. My reaction time is pretty quick. Had a lot of practice. But the train is so heavy, it just takes a great distance to stop the train.
From the moment I put the key in until I take the key out, my responsibility is driving that car, and I'm doing everything I can to drive that car as safely as I can.
We never know all of the risk factors that are working against us, but we can know the good habits that we have working for us. So if we realize that we want to be able to protect ourselves, protect our family for the rest of our life as a driver, then we need some pretty good habits.
It's like training or exercising. If you practice those safe riding habits, when that circumstance does present itself, when that bicyclist or that pedestrian does suddenly dart in front of you at that stop sign that you're used to rolling through, if you've developed the habit of stopping at that stop sign, then all that training is paid off. Even in that, just for that one little instant, it's paid off.
But you just have to commit and say to yourself, I'm going to make changes because I want to stay alive. And just do it. And one of the things I do is I sit down and say, okay, here's a goal and what I'm going to change about the way I drive.
The payoff for any one of these habits is that we're going to have control over the situation. And in life, when we have control, we have less stress. And we're not going to be victimized by our bad habits or by somebody else's bad habits. So it's going to make our day a lot better and the quality of our life a lot better by having these habits. But it has to be there every single time. Every single time.